Hey there. So today I wanted to talk about creativity and making space for that as a solopreneur. There are all different types of personalities when it comes to being a solopreneur. Obviously, we're all human beings, we're all a little bit different. And some of us have to work a little harder to create creative space. I want to talk to you about doing that in your business so it not only makes you a happier, more well-balanced solopreneur, but also you can be tremendously more effective in servicing your clients when you bring in elements of creativity that light you up. So let's go ahead and dive right into it. Welcome to My Solopreneur Life. I'm Terry Pappy, your gracious host, and I am so glad you're here. I have a wonderful episode for you. Sit back, relax, and let's have some real talk about what it is to be a solopreneur. So if you know the work that I do or what I've been talking about, I'm a creative person. It's pretty obvious. It's so very present in my life because I've led a creative career. I went to the Art Institute of Pittsburgh. I learned how to do commercial art and graphic design. Every job I've had has had some element of creativity in it. So for me, it was very much on the nose. It was Terry's an artist. She paints, she writes, she's published books, she's done all these things. She has a creative business. Yes, this is all true. But what I find is that it's easy as a solopreneur to back burner fostering creativity. And when you do that, there's kind of part of your soul that dries up. And even as a creative, I have done that. So for me, I have to work even harder to make creativity an important part of what I do in my business, but also an important part of my life. Because I'm so overtly creative, it's so easy for me to be a creative person, whether that's the literal sense of the artsy type stuff, or whether it's more about coming up with ideas on ways to make your business more efficient, as well as helping your clients more. I'm going to tell you a couple of different stories and share some things that hopefully will help you look at creativity differently. This is going to be really good for you because if you have been kind of lagging in allowing yourself to have some play time, some creative thinking time, or working on your business in a creative way versus, I gotta crush this problem, then this is really gonna be beneficial to you. When I first started my business, I was more in the framework of, as far as my mindset was about, I gotta get clients, I gotta start getting revenue, I gotta figure out if this is what I wanna do. If you listen to any of my past stuff, I was not in the best emotional state because of what I had gone through in my personal life. So I was grieving. I was trying to figure out, who am I? What am I doing here? And it really kind of came down to survival. So I didn't have the best tools in my toolbox when I first started. All I had was vast experience in the communications world. The last job I had was working for Marriott, running their web design team for their vacation club properties. I'd done that for 6 years, and I really loved it, and I thought I would work there forever, as many of us do when we get into a job we really enjoy. But then life invariably kicks us out and says, okay, you need to do this now. And that's kind of what happened to me. But when I first started out, I was like, okay, I'm just going to do freelance stuff. I'm just going to work on this and do that. Now, you would think, because of the nature of what it is, designing websites, logos, all that kind of stuff. And this is back in 2004, 5, 6, 7, that era. So web stuff was still relatively evolving and it's nowhere near what it is today as far as what we can accomplish and what can be done for us through a lot of the tools that we have at our disposal. For me, it was bringing the old school training that I had pre-computer to the new technology that I was so excited about and enjoyed because it was so immediate. However, because I had this mindset of I got to survive, I got to get clients, I got to build websites, I over-delivered. I was like, yeah, you need that. I'll do that for you too. And so I kind of had that desperation mentality about what I was doing. And what that did was that kind of squelched my creative light. Now, fast forward to 3, 4, 5 years into having my own business, a couple things happened. One, I realized this is what I want to do. Like, I can actually make a business out of this, survive and flourish doing what I love, having the freedom of being a solopreneur. No real desire to grow a big agency or have a big business around what I was doing. I just enjoyed doing it. I loved working with my clients. I was really starting to gain confidence and work through some of my personal issues that had been kind of weighing me down. And so all of a sudden I felt a lot lighter. I was starting to see patterns in the way my customers and clients were bringing work to me. And those patterns were gaps that I identified. And through those gaps, like for example, I had clients come to me and they really didn't know their own customers. There were things that they just didn't understand or they were making assumptions about. And so what I started doing was interviewing my clients' customers to find out what's really going on, what do they like about my client, what do they struggle with in their marketplace, in their environment, what are some of the constraints. And it was incredible what that exercise brought to the table from the standpoint of how I was able to serve my clients that much better. I wrote better copy. It was much more targeted to what their ideal client was interested in as far as hiring them, and everything changed. And so I made that part of the service that I offered. The second thing that I found a pattern that was missing was their communications were very inconsistent. They were dated. There were gaps, meaning they had things missing, like they didn't have a website or they didn't have a true corporate identity as far as their logos, stationery, labels, how they branded themselves, and a lot of other things that were like design and how we communicate and market what we do. And then the third thing was they had no referral system. They had no way of helping their current clients or past clients continue to advocate for them, give them more wallet share, and also refer them. And so those three areas became my sweet spot. And I always focused everything that I did from the initial client intake into how I offered solutions. So they may come to me for a website, but then when I take a look at their overall business communications and their strategy, I'd be like, okay, so if you're going in this direction, these are the things that I think will help you get there faster. They were like, this is great. I never looked at it that way. So we would execute against those things and implement those things. And then they'd see these crazy results and new doors would open up. I had some clients that actually added new services or talked about their services in a completely different way that so resonated with a better type of client. They ended up doing so much better as far as meeting their business goals. Those instances of where I started seeing those gaps, noticing the patterns, that really led me to rebranding my own business and helping me see that there are opportunities here that can really be inspired from a sense of creativity. So for me, the creativity is not just the artsy execution and the writing and the design and all that. That is what I mean by it's just too on the nose. There are levels of creativity that all of us humans have. Even the analytical, very logical types definitely benefit from creativity and incorporating creativity into their daily life as far as how they run their business. I want to talk about a couple different things about creativity. And it's like love is such a loaded word, right? Creativity is a loaded word. A lot of people just kind of put it in this box of artist or someone who has visual creative talent. You know, they are somehow successful in the arts, whether they're a true artist, whether they're a writer, whether they're great on the stage, whatever it is. It's like, this is what creativity is. And that is so misplaced. As a human being, as a spiritual being, we are all very creative. We create every experience. The things we think about attract different things to us that gravitate and influence how we make decisions about how we run our business. And so when you look at creativity as a thing that is where you have something that you created from nothing, in other words, an idea is creative, making a meal is creative, having a conversation with a friend is creative. So when you start by reframing what creativity is, then you can be freed up to see how you can incorporate more creativity into your business as well as your personal life. Because we're kind of doing it unconsciously. We just haven't identified that that is what we're doing. We're being creative every day when we get up and we think. That is creativity because we're creating something in our mind that we either will take action on, speak about, write about, somehow convey through the work that we do throughout the day. That is the first thing I want to get clear. Just reframe what creativity is in your life. There are those of us, as I mentioned before, that are very analytical, very logical. We can look at the stereotypical financial person or the person who's a business major, an executive, someone who's used to dealing with bottom line issues or things of a nature around legality or things that require a lot of regulation where it's like very black and white. So people who have that strength in the left side of the brain, the logical mind, and they work in a field of black and white, and things are logical and things are scientific and things can be rationalized and so on. And then you have the right side of the brain, which is much more creative, free-flowing. It's about shapes and senses and things like that. We all have two sides of the brain, and some of us are just more dominant in one side than the other. And you know where you fall. And some of us are a little more balanced. When you're looking at sharpening your positioning or bringing a better service to your clients or solving a problem, as an analytical person, you're doing this all day long. That's a creative process, which is pretty cool. And if you have that natural strength in the analytical, logical space, and you work in those types of projects or the services you provide are in that's your happy place, right? Those are the things that you're really good at. You can just see the problem right away and you take care of your clients. You are being creative in doing that. Let's look at how the analytical can be reframed into a creative process and why this is important to kind of do that reframe for the logical folks is because it helps you prevent burnout from pure execution. And that really goes to everybody, right or left brain, logical or creative. Having a deliberate intention to incorporate creativity into your work and realizing that what you're doing in servicing your clients is a creative function. And that's what's going to help improve your systems, your efficiency. It's going to reveal opportunities and smarter strategies. There's some really good things about bringing that type of creativity into your business. Here's the thing that solopreneurs miss, because there are things that can actually block creativity. The first thing, obviously, is your mindset, really understanding what creativity is, how it's showing up in the way you deliver service to your clients, how it shows up in your life. There can be things that you do in your business that are pretty straightforward. You don't look at them as creative things, but yet in your personal life, you may have a hobby or something that you do that can also be reframed more easily. And that's maybe where you could start practicing as something that's creative, whether it's a sport, whether it's anything. It can be anything in your non-work life. When you encounter blocks around creativity, and just listening to how I'm talking about this can be triggering for you. Like, oh, I don't agree with what Terry's saying about creativity. That's not how it shows up for me. Be patient and keep listening, because this is really important, especially for you if that's happening. What blocks creativity, or at least your understanding of fostering creativity in your life, is when you focus way too much. And oh gosh, I have done this so much. when you focus too much on productivity and output. And part of that came from how I mentioned I used to over deliver. And what ended up happening was it kind of drained me. It did drain me. It didn't kind of drain me. It totally drained me. When there's too much over focus on productivity and output, whether you're over delivering or not, that can block the creativity. Another thing is if you're waiting for like the perfect logic before you start exploring ideas, then that can also be a block. It's like, oh, it has to look a certain way before I do anything creative or use creativity in my business to solve client problems. Sometimes we do too much input and we have not enough reflection. We don't give ourselves time to kind of chew on things or savor things or let them ferment. And that's typically exhibited in the range of when you're coming up with new ideas. I know I used to get so excited when I had an idea, like whether it was to solve a client problem or solve a personal problem, I'd be like, okay, I want to get right into execution mode before I really kind of fully baked it or allowed it to ferment to the point where it was a little more solidified. And so that also can keep you from allowing the creative process to really flourish. And then again, that whole reframe of creativity, the other thing that blocks it is your concept that creativity is something that has to be artistic, and you've already concluded that you're not artistic and that you're not creative. And a lot of those decisions come from when we're very young and we're in an environment of education where we're asked to draw something or we're asked to build something, whether it was with popsicle sticks or something more sophisticated. And we were judged or criticized either by a teacher, a parent, or a fellow student. And sometimes we let that define who we are. So not that you need to go back and do all this psychology around like, oh, well, what did I always think? When did I start thinking that I wasn't creative? I remember working with some coaching clients that were doing my Compass Playbook, which is a creative problem-solving tool. And it has creative things to do like drawing and writing and list making and mind mapping. And I remember one person that, oh gosh, he just captured my heart because he had such a breakthrough in drawing. He just did a little simple cartoon because I worked with him and it's just doodles, do stick figures. But it was such an important part of the brain for him to use. And when he thought about, am I creative? He remembered back when he was very young being criticized about some drawings or whatever that he did. And he allowed that to define his level of creativity, of artistic ability. And he lived his whole life thinking, I'm not creative. What this exercise taught him in particular was that, yeah, you are creative. You're just not allowing yourself to flow with your creative ideas and just executing it in a very simple, childlike manner. And so he had a real breakthrough around that, which I was very excited to see. If you are of an analytical nature, if you have a strong definition, like I'm not creative, if you've made that decision about self-defining that you're not creative, then you need to shift how you view that. I can't express how important that is. If you are logical, use creativity to forward your work. So schedule your idea or your problem-solving blocks. A really interesting thing, this is a little sidebar on the creative problem solving. So Osborne Parnes created the creative problem solving system. It's a 6-step process. And I remember I went to the Creative Problem Solving Institute, CPSI, it's referred to, and I learned all about this process and why they created it and how it has divergent brainstorming and then convergent brainstorming and all these different things. And it's actually a science to creativity. It's really cool if you want to look at it from a more logical scientific lens, because yes, they actually put a science to creativity. You can do some things that inspire and allow you the time to have creativity in your business. And treat those ideas as experiments, not decisions. There are some real creative ways that more analytical, logical thinkers can bring in creativity in a scientific way that can really blossom some great ideas for not only your business, but in your personal life as well. And so There's a lot of different things that you can also do to exhibit and stretch that muscle of creativity and investigate creating time and resources for yourself. Find what you like. For example, if you want to do mind mapping, or if you want to understand more about divergent brainstorming, that is a really great exercise. I remember when I wanted to kind of refine what services I provided in my business. And so I went up to my whiteboard. I got this big whiteboard in my creative space, and I love it. I just get my marker out and just go crazy. And I made a simple list. Here are the things that I like about being a solopreneur, what it affords. Get freedom. I love working with clients and helping them solve their problems. I like this, I like that, and so on. And then I made a list of what I don't like. And what's interesting about the exercise was it was so clear as I was writing these things down, the things that came really quickly, I knew I felt strongly about, regardless of what list they were in. If they came out quick, oh yeah, like I hate it when customers don't pay. But the things that I loved are the things that I went back and started bringing more strongly into my business, more strongly into how I presented myself. And what it enabled was it enabled me to create efficiencies or automations out of the things that I didn't like, which were typically administrative things. And I have all those in place today. And then what it shined a light on were the things that I was really good at, really enjoyed, and wanted to just bolster and bring that much more strongly into my business. And that was incredibly helpful just to have that simple exercise. Anybody can do that. You don't need a creative muscle to be able to do that. And so when you look at building your creative muscle, the most important thing is to trust your intuition. And we all have intuition. And the more you're identifying intuition as exhibited through your creativity, the more excited you'll be about trusting it moving forward. If you don't really have a lot of intentional creative time placed into your life, for example, every morning I journal and I always go on walks and I have conversations with AI about ideas. And so there's all these different things that I'm doing, just being out in the world, having conversations with people, really paying attention to the signs along the way. For example, there was something that just recently happened to me where I've been thinking more about getting back to writing and publishing books. And I love writing. It's something I've done my whole career since high school, even before high school. I love writing, but I pursued communications career. And in so doing, the writing came along with it because writing is a big part of that, of course. But it wasn't the deliberate sense of like journalism writing, where you're publishing books or writing articles and things like that. But lately I've been thinking around like I'm ready to get back to writing and publishing books. And the interesting thing is I think about it and, ponder it while I'm out walking my dog. And sometimes driving, if I have a long drive like this weekend, I drove down to Palm Beach to hang out with a friend of mine. And the whole time down, I was listening to some YouTube videos about creativity and writing. And I really got excited about it. When you do something like that, you're emphasizing that creative ability and you're exercising that creative muscle. So some things that you can think about doing as far as prompts when it comes to enhancing your creativity. Here's a couple to get you started. The first thing I want to say is look at how you're conducting your life. Try to identify at least 3 areas where you're being creative, but you haven't labeled it creativity. In other words, if you're problem solving for a client in a unique way, that's creativity. If you're thinking of something related to an event or a person in your personal life, that's creativity. How are you exhibiting creativity? And it could be making a really different meal, like trying a new recipe or entertaining or all kinds of things like that. That's where you want to identify areas that you're already being creative, because then you'll be like, oh, okay, now that I've heard the way Terry created the distinction, I can see, yes, I have creativity in my life and I want to foster that. Okay. So Look for ways, once you've kind of reframed creativity, identified how you're doing it in your life, then take the next step and be deliberate about creating space and time for intentional creative thinking, creative processing, or doing something creative. Whether you take up a creative habit and do something like painting or sculpture or whatever. Even gardening is creative, working in the earth. It's just revitalizing. When was the last time you gave yourself uninterrupted thinking space? That is just like, instead of turning the TV on or listening to music or, having a conversation with somebody or watching a video or whatever the stimulation is coming at you, when was the last time you really gave yourself some uninterrupted thinking space where you're not vacillating over a worry or reminiscing something, or whether you're upset about something? No, this is really uninterrupted creative thinking space where you're thinking, how could I do XYZ for my clients? Or how could I get more social interaction? And that's a classic problem with solopreneurism, is we tend to be isolated. And I know I have a habit of hermiting sometimes if I'm not paying attention and being deliberate about getting myself out there and being among human beings in the 3D world. That is the space of where the creativity starts. That starts in your head and your heart. What lights you up? What gets you excited? Here's another one. What creative habit used to energize you that you no longer do? Think back. Like, was it a class you took? Was it a relationship you had that had a lot of really fun conversations and ideas? Where could you carve out 1 hour just this week to just think and explore? Where can you be more intentional about giving yourself just a small segment of time, whether it's on a walk, whether it's sitting down and maybe just thinking about something? There's a lot of different ways you can do it. Do it while you're exercising. I think in today's world, there's so many ways we can entertain ourselves with the music and the headphones and the whatever. Most of the people, if you go to the gym, they're wearing headphones of some sort, or they're looking at a screen and they're being entertained while they're working out. Well, maybe your entertainment could be something that's more creative. And then the last prompt I want to give you is, what idea has been quietly waiting for your attention? What idea do you have in your mind? Whether it's starting a new service in your business, whether it's starting your own business, regardless, what little idea, kind of like me with getting back to writing, or I've actually been thinking about starting a writing group in my community, which I'm not supposed to say anything about because it's still percolating, because we get excited about our ideas and we want to tell everybody. But think about those things when it comes to creativity and try to do your best to not only see where you're already being creative without judgment, but where can you incorporate creativity into the work you're doing, so that way you can feel more balanced, more holistic about how you're using your brain and your talents in the world. And you never know, it could actually lead to a new expansion in your business, how you're serving your clients, and maybe even bring in some more money into the business, which we all love that, right? Get out there and try to figure out, how can I be more creative? And I think you'll be surprised how creative you already are. Well, I know you're disappointed, but that's it for this episode. Listen, the great news is there's another one coming, so stay tuned. Anyway, I just want to make sure that you do the prompt. If this episode had a prompt, and you get that homework done, because you're going to be a better solopreneur. How's that for a maternal finger shaking at you? Hey, listen, thanks so much for being here, for giving me time of your day, and, for taking it on. So if you want to learn more and stay connected with me, just head on over to mysolopreneurlife.com. Thanks a bunch. See you soon. That was pretty good. I think I'll keep that one.